There's a version of you that already has everything you've been asking for. Right now, in this very moment, that version exists. Not in some distant future. Not waiting for you to become worthy. But alive, breathing, moving through a world where the thing you're desperate for is already done. Most people spend their entire lives trying to get there. Striving, pushing, forcing, begging the universe to finally give them what they want. But here's what I learned after years of working with the invisible laws that govern this reality. You don't climb toward your desire. You don't earn your way into the life you want. You make a single, instantaneous switch in identity, and everything in your outer world rearranges itself to match who you've just become. I'm going to show you exactly how to do this, not through visualization that feels empty, not through affirmations you don't believe, but through a genuine shift so real that you'll feel it in your body before you see it in your bank account, your relationships, or your circumstances. This is about stepping through an invisible door that's been open the entire time. And on the other side, you're already home. You know that feeling when you're waiting for something to happen? That awful tension in your chest? That checking your phone every 5 minutes, refreshing your email, wondering when, wondering if? That feeling is not evidence that your desire is far away. It's evidence that you're standing in the wrong identity. You're living as the person who needs it to come. And as long as you're that person, it can't arrive. Not because the universe is cruel, but because you're broadcasting a frequency that says, I don't have it, and this world, in its perfect responsiveness, says, yes, you're right. You don't. Listen carefully. Every single moment, you are occupying an identity. You might not have chosen it consciously. It might have been handed to you by your parents, your failures, your bank account, your last relationship. But it's there, humming underneath everything you do, every choice you make, every word you speak. Your identity is the lens through which reality gets filtered. And here's the truth that will set you free. You can change that lens right now. Not tomorrow. Not after you've done the work or healed the wound or made the money. Now. The version of you that already won? She's not more talented. He's not more deserving. They didn't get lucky. They simply live in a different assumption about who they are. An assumption, my dear, is the only door to reality. Let me be absolutely clear about something. When I say you can step into the reality where you already won, I'm not talking about pretending. I'm not talking about fake it till you make it. I'm talking about a genuine inner shift that's so complete, so total, that your entire nervous system, your thoughts, your emotional world, and yes, eventually your three-dimensional reality, all reorganize around this new identity. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about finally telling yourself the truth that your circumstances have been hiding from you. You've been taught that believing comes after seeing. You've been taught that you'll feel successful after you succeed, that you'll feel loved after someone loves you, that you'll feel secure after the money arrives. But this is backwards. This is why you've been stuck. Feeling is the secret. The feeling must come first. Not the fake feeling, not the forced feeling. The natural feeling that arises when you've genuinely switched your identity. Think about who you become, the moment you get what you want. Not the jumping up and down excitement that fades. I mean the quiet, settled, knowing, the relaxation in your shoulders, the softness in your belly, the way you move through the world when there's nothing to prove. That version of you, that energy, that state of being is available right now, not as a reward for good behavior, but as a choice, a radical, revolutionary choice to stop living as the person who's chasing and start living as the person who's already arrived. I know what you're thinking. But Florence, I can feel that for a moment, but then reality crashes back in. I look at my bank account. I sleep in an empty bed. I go to the job I hate. How am I supposed to maintain this identity when everything around me contradicts it? This is the exact point where most people give up. They dip their toe into the new identity, they feel it for a moment, and then the old reality screams so loud that they jump right back into who they were. But here's what you must understand. Your current circumstances are not opposing your new identity. They are the lingering echo of your old one. They're not happening to you right now. They're happening from decisions you made, assumptions you held, identities you occupied weeks, months, sometimes years ago. Reality is always on a delay. Your outer world is always playing catch-up to your inner world. So when you look at your life, and it doesn't match the identity you're stepping into, you're not seeing evidence that it's not working. You're seeing evidence of where you were, not where you are. This is why persistence in the new identity is everything. Not the desperate persistence of effort, the relaxed persistence of knowing. You're not trying to convince the universe. You're simply refusing to go back to being the person who doesn't have it. Now let me tell you something that will change everything for you. The reason most people never manifest what they want is because they're living in what I call the gap. They're perpetually stuck between where they are and where they want to be, and they've made that gap their identity. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You wake up every morning, and the first thought is, I still don't have it. You look at your bank account, not enough. You look at your relationships, still alone. You look at your body, still not there. The gap becomes your morning prayer, your afternoon meditation, your evening lament. But here's what you need to understand. The gap is not real. It's a construct of linear time, and manifestation doesn't operate in linear time. In the realm of spirit, in the dimension where all things already exist, there is no gap. There is only the version of you who has it and the version of you who doesn't. And you get to choose which one you're going to be right now, in this moment. I had a student once who wanted to manifest a specific amount of money. She needed it desperately, or so she thought. Every day she would affirm, visualize, and declare. But every day she would also check her bank account with trembling hands. And every day the disappointment would crash over her like a wave. It's not here yet, she'd say. And those 4 words became her mantra of lack. One day I asked her, if you already had this money, would you be checking your account with fear? She stopped. Thought about it. No, she said quietly. I barely think about it at all. Exactly, I told her. So stop trying to manifest the money. Start manifesting the consciousness of someone who has money. That person doesn't anxiously check their balance. They don't panic. They move through the world with a quiet assurance. Within 3 weeks, the money came. Not because she stopped wanting it, but because she stopped needing it from a place of lack. She stepped into the consciousness first, and the circumstance followed. Now, you might be thinking, but what do I do in the practical world while I'm waiting for this shift to happen? And that's where most people stumble. They think spiritual law means sitting idle, doing nothing, just visualizing and affirming while the bills pile up and the opportunities pass them by. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's a difference between anxious action and inspired action. Anxious action comes from fear. It's the frantic sending of resumes to every company you can find, each one carrying the vibration of desperation. It's the grinding, the hustling, the exhausting yourself to prove your worth. And you can always tell when you're operating from this place because it feels heavy, it drains you. Even when you're moving, you're standing still. Inspired action feels different. It has a lightness to it. It comes not from need, but from readiness. You send the email because you feel called to, not because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. You make the phone call because the idea dropped into your consciousness with clarity, not because you're trying to force a door open through sheer will. I once worked with a man who was looking for new employment. He'd been searching for months with no results. Every interview led nowhere. Every promising lead went cold. He came to me exhausted, convinced he was cursed, that the universe had abandoned him. I asked him one question. When you walk into those interviews, what are you thinking? He was honest. I'm thinking, please pick me. I need this. I'll do anything. Just give me a chance. There it was. The consciousness of lack, of begging, of smallness. He wasn't showing up as the answer to their problem. He was showing up as a problem seeking their solution. We shifted his inner conversation. Before each interview, instead of rehearsing his desperation, he began to affirm, I am the perfect candidate for the perfect position. If this is my position, nothing can take it from me. If it is not, something better awaits. The very next interview, he walked in differently. He listened more than he spoke. He asked questions about their needs instead of merely listing his qualifications. He didn't grasp. He didn't beg. He showed up as an equal, a collaborator, someone who had value to offer. They offered him the job before he left the building. And that's what happens when you understand the law. Doors don't just open, they swing wide and invite you through. Now, let me ask you something. How many times have you stood at the threshold of something you wanted and convinced yourself you weren't ready? That you needed one more course, one more credential, one more year of experience before you could claim what was already yours? I've watched people postpone their good for decades. decades. Waiting for permission that will never come from outside sources. The universe doesn't care about your resume. It responds to your inner conviction. There was a woman who came to me, I'll call her Margaret. She had wanted to write since she was a child, but she kept telling herself she needed a degree in literature first. Then she said she needed to take a writing workshop. Then she needed to study under someone famous. Then she needed to read every classic novel ever written. Meanwhile, years passed. The stories inside her grew stale from being locked away. The vibrant voice she had in her 20s became timid and uncertain by her 40s. I said to her, Margaret, you're not preparing to write, you're avoiding it, and you're using preparation as a socially acceptable excuse. That hit her hard, but it needed to. I told her, speak your word, declare yourself a writer today, not when you're ready now, and watch what happens. She resisted at first, but finally she spoke it aloud. I am a writer. The next week, a friend mentioned a local publication looking for contributors. Margaret submitted a piece. It was accepted. Within 6 months, she had a column. Within a year, a book deal. Did she become a better writer overnight? No. But she stepped into the role, and the universe met her there. Opportunities that had been invisible suddenly became apparent. Doors that had been closed suddenly opened. See, when you declare a thing, you activate a spiritual law that's been waiting for your participation. You complete the circuit. Energy begins to flow. Most people wait for evidence before they believe. That's backwards. Belief creates the evidence. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether what you're telling it is true or false, possible or impossible. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and immediately begins to manifest it in your outer world. This is why affirmations work when they're done correctly. Not as desperate pleas, but as calm, confident declarations of truth. You're not trying to convince the universe, you're instructing your own inner power. Let me give you an example from my own practice. I knew a woman, brilliant and capable, who couldn't keep money. Every time she received any sum, something would happen, an unexpected bill, a broken appliance, a family emergency. The money would slip through her fingers like water. When we talked, she told me something revealing. She said, I've never been good with money, it's just how I am. There it was, her instruction manual to the universe. I am not good with money. And the universe, being a perfect servant, said, as you wish, and arranged circumstances to prove her right. We changed the instruction. Every morning and evening, she declared, money comes to me easily and stays with me joyfully. I am wise, prosperous, and financially blessed. At first, she felt foolish. The words seemed to mock her reality. Her bank account was nearly empty. Creditors were calling. But I told her what I'm telling you. Your current reality is just the outpicturing of your old beliefs. Keep impressing the new instruction, and the outer picture must change. Within weeks, something shifted. Not lottery winnings or sudden inheritance. Those are the fantasies of people who don't understand how spiritual law works. No, she received a promotion she hadn't asked for. A refund check arrived for something she'd forgotten about. A side opportunity presented itself. But more importantly, her relationship with money changed. She stopped the anxious spending, the fearful hoarding. Money began to move through her life with grace and ease. That's how it works in the real world. Your consistent inner instruction creates your consistent outer experience. The world is always working for you, never against you. But you must first work with it through the images you hold in your conscious mind. Let me share another story that demonstrates this principle beautifully. A young man came to me absolutely convinced he was destined for poverty. His father had been poor. His grandfather had been poor. He carried this lineage like a curse. I said to him, you're not continuing a family tradition. You're simply continuing a mental habit. And habits can be changed. He looked skeptical, but something in his heart was ready. We began the work. Every morning, before his feet touched the floor, he would picture himself as a prosperous man. Not fantasy wealth, not millions dropping from the sky, but a clear mental image of himself paying his bills with ease, having money left over, breathing freely about finances. The first 3 weeks, nothing visible changed, but something invisible was shifting. His anxiety decreased. He stopped complaining about money. He began to notice opportunities he'd walked past 100 times before. A side job, a skill he could monetize, a connection that led to a better position. Within 6 months, his income had doubled. Not through magic, through the magnetic power of changed consciousness. He became a different person internally, and the external world reflected that transformation back to him. This is not wishful thinking. This is spiritual law in operation. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about this?" It simply accepts the images you repeatedly feed it and sets about making them manifest in form. You are the gardener of your own mind. Every thought is a seed. You wouldn't plant weeds and expect roses. Yet that's exactly what people do when they fill their minds with pictures of limitation, failure, and fear. Then wonder why their lives look so bleak. Start today, right now. Choose one area of your life and begin to plant new seeds. See yourself as you wish to be. Not someday, not eventually. See it as already accomplished in the spiritual realm, simply waiting to take form in the physical. I often say, the imaging faculty is your greatest asset. The woman who desires a harmonious marriage must not dwell on the quarrels and disappointments. She must instead picture herself in a happy, loving relationship. She must see her partner as kind, considerate, and devoted, and hold that vision steadily. A man came to me once, deeply troubled about his business. His sales had dropped, his creditors were pressing, and everywhere he looked, he saw failure. I said to him, "You are hypnotized by your circumstances. You must break the hypnotic spell." I instructed him to take time each day to picture his business thriving, his customers satisfied, money flowing in easily and naturally. At first, he protested, "But how can I imagine success when I'm surrounded by failure?" I replied, "That is exactly why you must imagine it. Your imagination is the bridge between where you are and where you wish to be." Within weeks, unexpected orders came in. A debt he thought lost was suddenly repaid. New opportunities appeared as if from nowhere. But nothing had changed except his mental pictures. He stopped feeding the old condition and began nourishing the new. This is the law. You demonstrate what you contemplate. Whatever you give your attention to grows in your experience. If you constantly review your troubles, you are watering weeds. If you hold the vision of your desire fulfilled, you are watering the seeds of success. Now, some people say, "But isn't this just pretending? Isn't this denial of reality?" No, it is recognition of a higher reality. The spiritual realm is more real than the material. What we see with our physical eyes is the result of what has already been established in consciousness. When you change the inner picture, the outer must eventually conform. Think of it this way. An architect doesn't look at an empty lot and say, "There's nothing here, so I'll just accept that." He sees the building already completed in his mind. He works from the blueprint, the invisible pattern, and eventually the physical structure rises to match his vision. You are the architect of your life. You have been given the divine blueprint, the perfect pattern held in infinite intelligence. Your work is to align your thoughts, your words, and your mental images with that perfect pattern. And let me tell you, beloved, this work of alignment is not arduous, it is joyful. It is not a burden, it is a liberation. When you truly understand that you need not strain or struggle, that you need only to see clearly and speak with faith, the entire experience transforms. I have watched people exhaust themselves trying to force doors to open through sheer willpower. They push and strain, they manipulate and scheme, they worry themselves sick trying to figure out every detail. And all the while, the door that is meant for them swings open effortlessly, but they cannot see it because they are facing the wrong direction. Your divine mind knows the way. Your higher self sees the open door. Your work is simply to turn toward it. Now, you may ask, but how do I know which door is mine? How do I distinguish between my ego's desires and my soul's true calling? This is where intuition comes in, that still, small voice within you that speaks in feelings, in gentle nudges, in sudden knowing. Your ego shouts, your soul whispers. Your ego demands immediate gratification. Your soul is patient, knowing that divine timing is perfect timing. I remember a young woman who came to me, desperate to marry a particular man. She had convinced herself that this was her divine selection. She affirmed it daily. She visualized the wedding. But something within her remained uneasy, a subtle resistance she tried to override with more affirmations, louder declarations. I said to her, "Dear one, are you speaking faith, or are you speaking fear dressed up as faith?" She began to cry. The truth had touched her. She had been trying to force a square peg into a round hole, trying to make her will into God's will, rather than surrendering to the divine plan that was already perfect. Within 3 months of releasing that relationship, she met a man who was so clearly meant for her that she laughed at how hard she had worked to make the wrong thing happen. The right thing required no force at all. It unfolded with grace, with ease, with unmistakable rightness. This is the difference between manifestation and manipulation. Manifestation is alignment. Manipulation is resistance. When you are truly aligned with your divine pattern, you feel expansion, not contraction. You feel peace, not anxiety. You feel excited anticipation, not desperate grasping. And this is where so many of us have been misled. We've been taught to fight for what we want, to push, to force, to make it happen through sheer will. But that approach comes from fear. Fear that if you don't grab it now, it will slip away forever. True manifestation doesn't feel like a battle. It feels like coming home. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely exhausted. She'd been working on herself for years. Affirmations, visualizations, mood boards, you name it. And yes, some things had shifted. But she felt tired, burned out, like she was running on a treadmill that never stopped. "When do I get to rest?" she asked me, and I could hear the ache in her voice. Here's what I told her, and what I tell you now. You rest times and times the knowing. Not after the manifestation. Not once everything is perfect. Right now, in this moment. Because when you truly understand that your good is already established in divine mind, you stop scrambling, you stop performing. You stop trying to convince God, or the universe, or your subconscious mind that you're worthy. You simply are. Your worthiness isn't something you earn through enough affirmations or positive thinking. It's your birthright. It was established before you took your first breath. Now, does this mean you do nothing? Absolutely not. But there's a profound difference between inspired action and frantic doing. Inspired action feels light. It feels natural. It's the next obvious step that presents itself when you're in alignment. You don't have to manufacture it or force it. It arises from within, and you follow it with ease. Frantic doing, on the other hand, comes from panic. It's the voice that says, if I don't do something right now, I'll miss my chance. It's exhausting because you're operating from lack, not abundance. Here's a simple test. Before you take any action toward your desire, pause. Place your hand on your heart. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? Or am I doing this because it feels like the natural next step? That pause, that moment of honest inquiry can save you years of wasted effort. I've watched people spin their wheels for decades, doing, and getting nowhere. Not because they weren't working hard enough, but because every action was rooted in fear rather than faith. And then I've watched others move mountains with what seemed like minimal effort, simply because they were aligned. They weren't pushing the river, they were flowing with it. This is what I mean when I talk about working times with times the universe rather than against it. You see, most people exhaust themselves trying to force outcomes. They grip so tightly to their plans that they strangle the very thing they're trying to bring to life. I learned this lesson through my own stubborn resistance. Years ago, I had convinced myself that a certain opportunity had times to unfold in a particular way. I could see it so clearly in my mind, the exact sequence of events, the precise timing, even the people who would be involved. And when reality began to deviate from my mental script, I panicked. I pushed harder. I manipulated circumstances. I tried to orchestrate every detail. The result? Complete collapse. The opportunity dissolved entirely, and I was left standing in the wreckage of my own making, wondering what had gone wrong. It wasn't until later that I understood. I had been so attached to the times that I had blocked the times what asterisk. The universe had something far better in mind, but I couldn't receive it because my hands were clenched around my inferior plan. This is the paradox of manifestation that confuses so many people. We're told to visualize, to have faith, to claim our good. And yes, all of that is true. But there's a fine line between claiming and clutching, between faith and control. Real faith says, this or something better. Real faith holds the vision but releases the mechanism. Real faith trusts that the intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and grows acorns into oak trees can probably handle the details of your desire better than your anxious, limited mind can. When you're truly aligned, there's a quality of ease that permeates everything. Not passivity, ease. You're still taking action, but the action feels inspired rather than desperate. You're still showing up, but you're not dragging yourself through quicksand. I think of it like sailing. A skilled sailor doesn't fight the wind or curse when it changes direction. They adjust their sails. They work times with times, the elements. And sometimes, they wait. They understand that there's a difference between stillness and stagnation, between patience and procrastination. The question you must ask yourself is this: am I sailing or am I drowning? Am I adjusting my sails or am I white-knuckling the wheel, determined to go north even though every current is carrying me south? Because here's what I know. When you're moving in the wrong direction, the universe will send you signals, obstacles, resistance, delays that feel absolutely maddening. And you can interpret these as cosmic cruelty, or you can recognize them as course corrections. A woman I knew once told me she'd been trying to manifest a new home for 3 years. 3 years! She'd done everything right. Visualized, affirmed, created vision boards that could wallpaper a cathedral, and nothing. Every house fell through. Every offer got rejected. Every perfect property slipped through her fingers at the last moment. She came to me in desperation, convinced the universe had abandoned her. "What am I doing wrong?" she asked, her voice breaking. I looked at her and said, "Tell me about the homes you've tried to get." And as she described them, a pattern emerged. Every single one was in the same neighborhood where her ex-husband lived with his new family. Every single one was a replica of the life she'd lost, not the life she was meant to create. The universe wasn't denying her. It was redirecting her. 6 months after she stopped fighting and started listening, she found a home in a completely different part of the city, near a community of artists and writers, people who lit her up, a neighborhood she'd never even considered. She told me later, "If I'd gotten any of those other houses, I would have built a prison and called it a dream." This is what I mean by course corrections. The delays you're experiencing might be protecting you from something you can't yet see. The resistance might be redirecting you towards something infinitely better than what you originally asked for. Your job isn't to push harder, it's to stay open, to trust, to stop treating obstacles as enemies and start treating them as information. Because here's what most people get backwards. They think manifestation is about forcing reality to match their blueprint. But real manifestation is about aligning yourself so completely with your highest good that the universe can deliver it without you blocking the delivery. You're not here to micromanage the cosmos. You're here to collaborate with it. And collaboration means you don't get to control every detail. You don't get to dictate the timeline. You don't get to demand that it happens your way or not at all. What you do get to do is hold the vision, feel the feeling. Take the inspired action. And then this is the hard part, let go of the how and the when. Because the moment you clench your fist around an outcome, you've stopped manifesting. You've started manipulating. And manipulation always creates resistance. So what do we do instead? We hold the vision, times and times we hold our peace. I knew a woman once, brilliant, creative, full of ideas. She wanted to write a book, and she told everyone. She talked about the chapters, the title, the cover design. She joined writing groups and debated narrative structure. She created elaborate outlines and vision boards. But she never wrote the book. Because she was so busy announcing the book, so invested in people's reactions to the idea of the book, that she had no energy left for the actual writing. The manifestation leaked out through her mouth before it could take form through her hands. There's a spiritual principle here that most people miss. Sacred silence is a womb. It's where things gestate. When you tell everyone what you're manifesting before it's born, you're essentially pulling the seed out of the ground every day to check if it's growing. You're exposing tender new growth to harsh elements. I'm not saying you should never share your dreams. I'm saying there's a season for silence and a season for speaking, and most people get the timing backwards. When something is newly planted in your consciousness, it needs protection. It needs the darkness of the soil, the privacy of your own faith, the shelter of your consistent belief. It doesn't need opinions, suggestions, doubts, or even well-meaning questions. So you hold it quietly, not from fear, that's suppression, but from reverence, from knowing that something holy is happening beneath the surface. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop talking about what you're manifesting and start times being times, the person who already has it, everything shifts. You stop seeking validation because you're validated from within. You stop needing to convince anyone because you're already convinced. You stop forcing doors open because you trust that the right doors will swing wide at exactly the right moment. This is what I call faithful expectancy, and it's perhaps the most magnetic state you can embody. You're not desperate. You're not passive. You're simply aligned, expectant, available. Like a woman who knows her beloved is coming home, she doesn't stand at the window wringing her hands. She prepares the house, she puts on something beautiful, she lights candles, she moves through her day with a secret smile because she knows. That knowing, that's the frequency that calls everything to you. And when you live in that knowing, something extraordinary happens. The universe stops testing you. It stops asking you to prove yourself worthy, because you've already claimed it. You've already said yes to yourself. I've watched people struggle for years, decades, even chasing the same dream, knocking on the same doors, exhausting themselves in the pursuit. And then one day, something shifts. They stop chasing. They start embodying. They walk differently. They speak differently. There's a quiet authority in them now, a settledness. And suddenly, opportunities that were impossible before become inevitable. This is what I mean by the word made flesh. The word is your conviction. The flesh is your daily reality becoming the mirror of that conviction. Let me be clear about something. This isn't about sitting on your couch and visualizing until someone knocks on your door with a check. That's fantasy, not faith. Faith is active. Faith moves. But here's the difference. Faith moves from inspiration, not desperation. It moves because it's being called forward, not because it's running away from lack. You know, the action is right when it feels like play, like you're being pulled rather than pushed. When every step feels like, of course, this is what I do next. That's divine timing. That's you and the universe dancing together instead of wrestling. I remember a woman who wanted to write a book. She'd been trying for 7 years. 7 years of false starts, of staring at blank pages, of beating herself up for not being disciplined enough. Then she came to understand this principle. She stopped trying to write the book and started living as the writer she already was. She rearranged her morning. She bought herself flowers for her desk. She began introducing herself differently at gatherings. I'm a writer, she'd say, with no published work to show for it yet. 3 months later, the book poured out of her in what felt like a fever dream. Not because she forced it, because she'd already become the person for whom writing was natural. That's the secret they don't tell you. You don't become successful and then start living like a successful person. You live like the successful person first, and success has no choice but to meet you there. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but I can't act successful when I'm struggling to pay my bills. That feels fake, dishonest, like I'm lying to myself. Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this is where most people get stuck. Acting as if isn't about pretending your problems don't exist. It's not about denial or delusion. It's about refusing to let your current circumstances dictate your state of consciousness. When I say act as if, I don't mean go out and spend money you don't have. I don't mean fake an attitude or put on a mask for other people. What I mean is this. Align your inner world with the reality you're calling in. Let me give you a practical example. Say you're struggling financially. The old way of thinking says, I'm broke, I can't afford anything. Money is so hard to come by. And so you walk around with slumped shoulders. You avoid looking at opportunities. You say no to every invitation because you're saving money. But here's what happens energetically. You're broadcasting lack. You're living in the frequency of poverty, and the universe can only give you more of what you are. The new way, the spiritual law way, is different. You don't ignore your bills, but you don't let them define you either. You say, money flows to me easily and constantly. You walk with your head high. When you see something beautiful, you appreciate it, instead of resenting that you can't have it. You bless every dollar that comes in and goes out. You treat the money you do have with respect and gratitude. You start acting from abundance before the abundance appears in your bank account. And here's what's mystical about this. When you change your inner state, your outer circumstances begin to shift. Not because you're magically creating money out of thin air, but because you're finally in alignment with the flow of prosperity that was always trying to reach you. You start noticing opportunities you couldn't see before. People think of you for jobs or projects. Ideas come to you, doors open that were previously invisible. That's not coincidence, that's spiritual law in action. I've watched this unfold in the most unexpected ways. A woman once told me she'd been trying to sell her house for 2 years. 2 years of worry, 2 years of doubt, 2 years of imagining financial ruin. Then she changed her approach. Every morning, she stood in that house and said, "Thank you that the perfect buyer is coming. This home goes to the person who will love it as I have." Within 3 weeks, she had an offer above asking price. The buyer told her they'd driven past the house 100 times, but something that particular day made them stop. You see, your faith acts as a magnetic force. It doesn't just change your attitude, it literally rearranges the energy field around your life. Scientists might call it quantum physics. I call it the law of attraction, though that term barely scratches the surface of what's actually happening. Here's what most people miss. This process requires you to get out of your own way. Your intellect will fight you every step. It will present evidence. It will cite past failures. It will remind you of every logical reason why your desire cannot manifest. You must gently, persistently, set that logical mind aside and speak to the deeper intelligence that governs all things. I tell my students, treat your word like a seed. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You plant it, water it with faith, and trust the invisible process. Your spoken word is the same. Speak it, believe it, then go about your life with calm expectancy. The desperate energy of checking and worrying actually pushes your good away. A man asked me once, "But Florence, what if I speak the word and nothing happens?" I said, "Then you didn't truly speak it. You spoke words while harboring doubt." There's a vast difference between repeating affirmations with your mouth while your heart screams disbelief and speaking with the kind of inner knowing that expects results. This knowing, this unshakable certainty, is what the ancient texts called faith. Not hope, not wishing, faith. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You see, the universe doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to conviction. When you wish, you're sending out vibrations of lack. When you speak the word with faith, you're claiming what already belongs to you in the invisible realm. I knew a woman who had been ill for years. She'd wished herself well 1,000 times. She'd hoped and prayed in the old way, the way that says, "Please, maybe, if it's meant to be." Nothing changed. Then one day, she stopped wishing. She looked at herself in the mirror and said with absolute authority, "I am whole. I am well. This body is a perfect instrument of the divine." She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She declared. Within weeks, her condition began to reverse. The doctors called it spontaneous remission. I call it the law in action. This is the difference between the person who achieves their vision and the person who dies with their dreams still locked inside them. One wished, one believed, one hoped it might happen, one knew it must. Now, you might be thinking, "But Florence, I do believe. I really do." And I say to you, do you? Or do you believe until the rent is due? Do you believe until you check your bank account? Do you believe until you look in the mirror and see what appears to be evidence to the contrary? True faith doesn't waver when the evidence contradicts it. True faith stands firm in the face of every appearance because it knows that appearances are temporary, but the word spoken in faith is eternal. When Jesus stood before the tomb of Lazarus, he didn't say, "I hope this works. I wish Lazarus could come back." He said, "Lazarus, come forth," he commanded. He knew, and the universe had no choice but to obey. You have that same power within you, not because you're special, but because you're human, and every human being is an outlet for the divine. The same intelligence that breathes life into your body, that beats your heart without your conscious effort, that grows a child from a single cell, that intelligence is waiting for your instruction. But you must give clear instructions. You must stop contaminating your words with doubt. Think of the gardener who plants seeds. Does she stand over them, wringing her hands, saying, "I hope this works, but probably nothing will grow"? No. She plants the seed with confidence. She waters it. She trusts the intelligence in the earth and in the seed itself. She doesn't dig it up every day to check its progress. She allows the natural law to work. You must do the same with your words. Plant them in confidence, water them with faith, and then, and this is where most people fail, you must leave them alone to grow. Stop digging them up with your doubts. Stop checking every 5 minutes to see if they've manifested yet. I've watched people do this over and over. They speak their word. They affirm their good. And then an hour later, they're back in fear, saying, "But what if it doesn't work? What if I'm fooling myself?" Each time you do this, you're pulling up the seed before it can take root. The Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Substance, evidence. Your faith itself is the material from which your demonstration is formed. When you hold steady in your word, refusing to be moved by appearances, you are actually building your good in the invisible realm, and it must appear. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to believe something you don't believe. That's strain, and strain closes the door to supply. This is about recognizing what's already true in the spiritual realm and aligning your consciousness with it. Every good thing already exists. There is no lack in spirit. There is no limitation in the divine mind. All the abundance, all the love, all the health, all the success that exists anywhere is already present in the invisible, waiting for recognition and acceptance. Your work is simply to accept it, to speak it into visibility, to stand firm in your knowing until the invisible becomes visible. I'll give you one more illustration. When you turn on a light switch, you don't see the electricity. You only see its effect, the light. The electricity was always there in the wires, waiting. Your action at the switch completes the circuit and brings forth the light. Your word is that switch. The power is always there. God's abundant supply is always present, but you must complete the circuit with your faith-filled word. And you must keep that circuit closed. You must maintain your word until the light appears. Now, you might be wondering, how long must I hold this word? How long must I maintain this faith before I see results? And I say to you, as long as it takes. For time is nothing to God. The answer may come in an hour, in a day, in a week, but your part is simply to stand firm on your word and refuse to waver. I knew a woman who needed a specific sum of money, exactly $3,000, for a debt that was causing her tremendous anxiety. She came to me, her face lined with worry, her hands trembling as she spoke. I said to her, "Speak your word, claim your supply, and then rest times in that word." She looked at me with doubt clouding her eyes. "But what if nothing happens?" "Nothing?" I said. "My dear asterisk, everything times is happening the moment you speak your word with faith. The invisible machinery of the universe is already set in motion. Your work now is simply to keep your mind stayed on your good, to give thanks, and to watch for the way to open." She agreed, though reluctantly. She spoke her word. "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let all that is mine by divine right now reach me in great avalanches of abundance." For days she saw nothing. The deadline approached. Her worry wanted to return, creeping back like a thief in the night. But she had been instructed, do not look at conditions, do not count the days, simply affirm your word morning and evening, and release it to God. And she did. On the very day before the debt was due, on the very last possible moment, she received a check in the mail, an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she had barely known. The amount? Exactly $3,000. Not $2,000, not $4,000, but precisely what she had required. This is how spirit works, with mathematical precision, with divine timing, never early, never late, but always times right on time, asterisk. You see, when you speak your word with conviction, you are not begging, you are not pleading, you are times decreeing, asterisk. You are announcing what already exists in the spiritual realm and calling it forth into the visible world.